Let's get physical. It's Jordan here, back again with this month's update on all the physical releases coming to PlayStation and Xbox consoles. As always, this video was researched, written, and edited by my man Tim. It's all down to him. Let's see what he's got for us this month. 1348 Ex Voto. I don't know how to say this. We're not off to a great start here. Releasing on the 4th of June for PlayStation 5 in North America and Europe, set during a brutal, plague-ravaged 14th century Italy, where religion, fear, and superstition have taken control of the world you find yourself in. So it's 1348, that makes sense now. Exploration and puzzle solving drive most of it, with a light horror leaning. It is a strong setting for this kind of thing, miserable in a fairly compelling way, but sadly Steam reviews have critiqued it for terrible performance and disappointing execution, so yeah, that's a shame. Formula Legends, releasing on the 4th of June for Xbox, PlayStation 5, and Switch in North America and Europe, an arcade racer inspired by decades of Formula racing history, blending fictionalized teams and tracks with a much lighter, more approachable handling model than the sim-heavy crowd. Career progression and historical nods seem to be the main hook here. Looks firmly aimed at players who miss racing games when they were allowed to be simpler, probably more enjoyable than accurate, which may honestly help. Gothic Remake is releasing on the 5th of June for Xbox and PlayStation 5 in North America and Europe, a full remake of the 2001 RPG, rebuilding its prison colony setting with modern visuals while keeping the original's rough-edge structure and faction-driven progression intact. You still begin as a nobody getting bullied by absolutely everyone, slowly clawing your way up through politics, monsters, and questionable life choices. There's genuine affection for the original, but also a bit of nervousness around how much should be actually modernized. Too faithful and it risks feeling ancient, too streamlined and it stops being gothic. But my executive producer, Mr. Awesome, he's chosen this as his pick of the month. Stellar Interface is releasing on the 10th of June for PlayStation 5 in North America, a roguelite Euro space shooter built around customizing your ship on the fly while weaving through enemy fire and increasingly chaotic encounters. Runs are fast, upgrade heavy, and constantly throwing new weapons and modifiers at you. Somewhere between a classic arcade shmup and a deck builder, not the most common match. It's already built up a decent following on PC for how flexible the builds can be. One of those games where things either click beautifully or collapse in seconds. More for the Amiga crowd than the KAMiBAKO audiences, but my executive producer, Dave Huswaite, he's chosen this as his pick of the month. Monopoly Star Wars Heroes vs. Villains, releasing on the 11th of June for PlayStation 5, Switch, and Switch 2 as a game key. A digital version of themed Monopoly boards swapping property empires for Star Wars locations. Underneath the lightsabers and branding, it's just Monopoly with a Star Wars gimmick. Windswept is releasing on the 12th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch worldwide, a cozy looking 2D platformer built around traveling between scattered islands by glider, boat, and whatever else keeps you airborne for more than a few seconds. Resource gathering and light crafting feed into the journey, but with the real focus being the atmosphere and the simple pleasure of drifting around at your own pace. Very much in the quiet indie game with soft lighting category, though the movement does at least give it more identity than most. Tokyo Psychodemic is releasing on the 16th of June for PlayStation 5 in North America, a live-action detective thriller set in a near-future Tokyo recovering from a deadly pandemic, where you investigate a series of murders through surveillance footage, documents, and reconstructed crime scenes. It plays more like piecing together evidence on a conspiracy board than a traditional adventure game. Already out in Japan, where it picked up attention for its presentation and grim atmosphere, even if the pacing proved a bit divisive and it wasn't received the best, still certainly not short on ambition. And my executive producer G Bautista 100, he's chosen this as his pick of the month. R-Type Tactics 1 and 2 Cosmos is releasing on the 18th of June for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Switch in North America, and Europe it's already out in Japan. A remastered bundle of the two PSP strategy spin-offs, turning R-Type's usual side-scrolling chaos into slower, grid-based tactical warfare, commanding biomechanical ships and fighting deeply unpleasant alien forces, just with a lot more menus involved this time. The shift to turn-based strategy always made these games a bit of an oddity within the series, but that's also why people remember them the most. Dense, awkward, and strangely fascinating, and in my personal opinion, genuinely brilliant. At least in Tim's opinion. Me, Jordan, I think they're pretty good. And my executive producers, Coal Animals, God of Resin, and JCross7776, they've chosen this as their pick of the month. The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales, releasing on the 18th of June for Xbox and PlayStation 5. There is a Nintendo Switch 2 game key, sadly. A fantasy action RPG from the creators of Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default, following Elliot and his fairy companion Faye as they travel across a fractured world tied to an ancient prophecy, whilst traveling across 4 different eras spanning 1,000 years to save a princess. Combat mixes real-time swordplay with magic and exploration, leaning into a brighter, more traditional adventure style than a lot more modern RPGs are willing to go. It's one of Square Enix's more openly old-fashioned projects in a while, right down to the tone. Whether that feels charming or dated will probably depend on your tolerance for earnest fantasy storytelling, but I think this looks like a good potential classic of the future, and my executive producers agree. Dane Wilkinson, Rose, Adamantium, Jennifer M, Lewis K, Nerdy Sean, Madhawk110, and Sora Cat, they've chosen this as their pick of the month. Koira is releasing on the 18th of June for PlayStation 5 in Europe, a quiet puzzle adventure about guiding a lost puppy through a hand-drawn forest while avoiding hunters and restoring the world around you. There's no dialogue, very little pressure, and a heavy reliance on music and animation to carry the emotional side of things. It's already earned a fair bit of praise for its presentation alone, the sort of game that clearly wants you to feel something, preferably before the credits roll. Drive Rally, releasing on the 18th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in North America and Europe, an arcade rally game with a chunky low-poly style and a love for the louder side of the 90s arcade scene, and a bit of Initial D worship. Handling sits firmly on the accessible side with exaggerated drifts, long slides, and co-drivers enthusiastically yelling directions while you bounce between forests and deserts. Well received on PC, and will have an audience very much ready to eat this up on consoles. Chickenhare and the Treasure of Spiking Beard, releasing on the 19th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in North America and Europe. A family-friendly action platformer based on the animated film, following the part chicken, part hare adventurer through pirate hideouts, traps, and cartoonish enemy encounters. Deliberately simple and aimed at younger players. EA Sports UFC 6 releasing on the 19th of June for Xbox and PlayStation 5 worldwide. EA's MMA series returns with the usual roster updates, presentation tweaks, and another attempt to make cage fighting look simultaneously brutal and marketable. These games tend to improve in small increments rather than dramatic leaps, and this looks much of the same, familiar territory for anyone invested in the series. Hauntii is releasing on the 23rd of June for PlayStation 5 in North America, a twin-stick adventure set in a ghostly afterlife where combat, puzzles, and exploration all revolve around possessing objects and creatures in the environment. The monochrome art style and unique non-stressful twin-stick shooter vibes give the whole thing the look of a moving storybook that is quite beautiful. It picked up strong praise digitally for its atmosphere and soundtrack in particular, one for those rare smaller games that clearly has a very specific vision behind it, and my executive producer Joshua L has chosen this as his pick of the month. KAMiBAKO is releasing on the 23rd of June for PlayStation 5 in North America, a strange hybrid of puzzle game, world restoration sim, and RPG built around repairing fragmented land by solving block-based puzzles. As regions recover, towns return, resources reopen, and the wider world slowly stitches itself back together. It is an unusual mix of ideas that feels extremely 90s Japanese PS1 in the best way possible. Hard to explain it cleanly, but at least it's trying something different. Pity it seems to have been received so poorly with its digital release, so perhaps it was a bad combo after all. Still, you gotta admire the attempt. Kemco RPG Selection Volume 4, Volume 5, and Volume 6 are all releasing in North America on PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch this month. Together, you get, let me do the math, 12 games over 3 releases. Miniature, I say miniature, they're still pretty chunky JRPGs, just on a very minimal budget. Kind of like RPG Maker games, but just a slight step up from that. They do have their fans, some consider them comfort food, and people just like collecting the different colored boxes. And my executive producer, the Nemo6, has chosen these as his pick of the month. Abyssus is releasing on the 25th of June for PlayStation 5 in Europe, with North America following in July. A co-op roguelike shooter set beneath the ocean in the ruins of a forgotten civilization, mixing fast gunplay with ancient technology and increasingly unpleasant sea creatures. Runs evolve around scavenging weapons and upgrades while trying not to get overwhelmed by whatever is crawling out of the dark next. It's drawn some comparison to Risk of Rain, though an FPS with much gloomier underwater scenery. Rayman 30th Anniversary Anniversary Edition, releasing on the 26th of June for PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch worldwide. A celebratory re-release focused entirely on the original 1995 Rayman, bundling together multiple versions of the same game, along with a prototype version, bonus levels, documentary extras, rewind feature, and other modern conveniences designed to make one of Ubisoft's most notoriously cruel platformers less hostile. Unfortunately, a lot of conversation around it was centered on the soundtrack. The original music has been replaced with newly arranged versions, and fans have been pretty vocal about not liking the change, particularly as there's currently no option to swap it back to the classic tracks, which is a shame because the rest of the package actually seems fairly thoughtful. But for a game that's tied to nostalgia, changing the music was always gonna down extremely poorly. But my executive producers, Cartoon Soren and OG CIB, they've chosen this as their pick of the month. Cabernet, releasing on the 26th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in Europe, a narrative RPG set in 19th century Eastern Europe, following a young doctor named Liza, as she unwillingly gets turned into a vampire. Conversations, relationships, and moral choices shape most of the experience here, with the central tension built around balancing humanity against the increasingly practical need to drink blood. It's been very well received on PC, particularly for its writing, atmosphere, and surprisingly cozy take on vampire horror RPG. And my executive producer, Brent McLean, he's chosen this as his pick of the month. Seventh Domain, Tree of Chaos is releasing on the 26th of June for PlayStation 5 in Europe, a side-scrolling action RPG that blends roguelike structure with Metroidvania exploration, throwing you through interconnected regions full of loot, bosses, and steadily escalating punishment. Builds revolve around randomized gear drops, skill combinations, and repeatedly dying until things finally start to make sense. Reception has been fairly mixed, with some players enjoying the combat loop while others have criticized the heavy reliance on the AI-generated assets. It definitely feels like one of those games you either click with immediately or quietly uninstall after a few hours. Xeno Crisis is releasing on the 26th of June for Xbox, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Switch in Europe, with North America following in August. A brutally difficult top-down shooter built like a lost Mega Drive game, for which it was released for in 2019, sending space marines through alien-infested corridors with very limited concern for your survival rate. Twin-stick shooting, procedural rooms, and relentless enemy waves have earned it a strong reputation amongst retro fans for absolutely refusing to go easy on players. Tiny game, enormous one more go energy, and my executive producer Instacritic has chosen this as his pick of the month. Hunt the Night is releasing on the 26th of June for PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch in Europe, a dark fantasy adventure heavily inspired by old Zelda games and Bloodborne-style aesthetics, following a hunter named Vespa as she battles monsters across a dying world trapped in an endless cycle of night. Combat is fast, dodge heavy, and surprisingly unforgiving for something with this kind of pixel art presentation. It's picked up decent followings on PC for its atmosphere and boss fights, though some found the difficulty spikes a bit much. But my executive producers, D's Nuts and Alexander Cato, they've chosen this as their pick of the month. STASIS Bone Totem is releasing on the 30th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in North America and Europe, maybe. An isometric sci-fi horror adventure set deep beneath the ocean, where a scavenger crew uncovers something aboard an abandoned underwater facility that should probably have stayed buried forever. Puzzle solving and exploration do most of the work, with the horror built around grotesque environments, body horror, and steadily worsening discoveries. It's already been praised heavily on PC for its writing and atmosphere, particularly among classic horror adventure fans, deeply unpleasant in a very deliberate way. Diluvian Winds is releasing on the 30th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in Europe. Maybe it's Red Hot game, so maybe not. A management sim about running a lighthouse shelter at the edge of the world, while floods, storms, and steadily worsening weather make survival increasingly difficult. Travelers arrive looking for food, rest, and somewhere vaguely less apocalyptic to stay, with each new resident bringing different skills and problems to manage. Not the best reviewed on its digital release, but certainly will appeal to some. Super Meat Boy 3D is releasing on the 30th of June for PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch 2 in Europe, with North America following in July. The famously unforgiving platformer makes a jump to full 3D, which feels extremely sensible or deeply cursed depending on your tolerance for precision jumping. The core idea remains intact though. Sprint through lethal obstacle courses, die instantly, respawn, and try again until you die about 3 million times. Reactions have been cautiously curious so far. People seem broadly willing to trust Team Meat, though there is understandable concern about whether the series' razor-sharp movement survives with the extra dimension. Momento is releasing on the 30th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in Europe. There is a Switch 2 game key, boo. A quiet room decorator that acts as a narrative puzzle adventure centered around memories, photographs, and piecing together fragments of somebody's past through environmental clues and light interaction. Feels very much like an iOS game, but maybe it'll be brilliant. Time will tell. Murky Divers is releasing on the 30th of June for PlayStation 5 in North America and Europe, a co-op horror game about cleaning up evidence for extremely suspicious underwater corporations, sending divers into dark wrecks to retrieve bodies, salvage materials, and avoiding whatever else is lurking down there. It's already found a decent audience on PC thanks to the mix of comedy and panic, very much in the friends screaming at each other in an underwater game genre. And by the way, if you want to purchase any of the retail games in this video, then please consider using the links I've put down below in the description and pinned comment. VGP are a fantastic company with free worldwide shipping on orders over 75 Canadian bucks, like 55 American dollars, not that much. Any purchase made via the links helps support me and Tim to help make these videos possible, so thank you ever so much. The Witcher's Bakery is releasing on the 30th of June for PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo Switch 2 as a game key in North America and Europe. A cozy management adventure about running a magical bakery, brewing enchanted recipes, serving customers, and gradually uncovering the stories of the town around you, chasing the same audience as games like Stardew Valley and Potion Permit, though with more pastries and considerably fewer life-threatening mines. Probably knows exactly who it's for, and my executive producer Ghost Bune has chosen this as her pick of the week. Bloody Rally Show is releasing on the 30th of June for PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch in Europe, a violent top-down racer that mixes rally driving with vehicular combat, zombies, and game show levels. It's deliberately scrappy and very ugly, but it seems that it's also, that's the appeal it's going for. Feels like an old PC game somebody found buried on a hard drive. A quick mention to some releases that were delayed until this month: FZ, Formation Z in Europe, Sworn, and Long Days Gone. Alright, limited run games. What pre-orders are ending this month? Well, Alien Rogue Incursion Evolved Edition pre-orders end on the 7th of June for Xbox, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch 2. A non-VR version of the survival horror shooter, originally built for PSVR 2, shifting the focus back onto traditional controls while keeping the same abandoned facilities, malfunctioning tech, and deeply unpleasant alien encounters. The VR release received a fairly mixed reception, with praise for atmosphere but criticism aimed at repetition and combat pacing. Still, anything wearing the Alien license automatically gains a certain amount of intrigue, and it's nice to have it more accessible now. Fuga Melodies of Steel 1, 2, and 3 are 3 individual releases where pre-orders end on the 14th of June for Xbox, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch. All 3 games are surprisingly bleak tactical RPGs about sacrifice, survival, and children being handed responsibilities that no child should realistically have. The series escalates, with each entry becoming more and more emotionally exhaustive, while the tactical combat expands and relationships between characters deepens, all climaxing in a wonderful trilogy of games. They've been available via an import for some time now on the Nintendo Switch, and they are very much beloved and classic titles. The limited run collections will be especially great for Xbox and PlayStation fans, and my executive producer Miami Sunrise has chosen this as their pick of the week. Aero, the Acro-Bat collection, pre-orders end on the 21st of June for PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch. A collection bringing back Sunsoft's 90s Mascot platformers, starring a circus bat who spends most of his time bouncing through industrial hazards and trying very hard to compete with the era's much bigger mascots. Both the Super Nintendo titles and the previously unreleased Mega Drive releases are included alongside modern extras like save states and rewind features. It's worth noting that it is also getting a European release, but slightly differently. The European release has more individual games. It has 2 bonus games compared to Limited Run, but Limited Run do have the Mega Drive games. It's very complicated, but I made a video dedicated to it, so go watch that. The Big Con Grift of the Year Edition pre-orders end on the 21st of June. For PS5 and Switch, a comedy adventure set in the 90s about a teenager skipping out on band camp to travel across America, scamming people in increasingly elaborate ways to save her family's video store. Dialogue choices, pickpocketing, disguises, and small-time cons make up most of the gameplay, all wrapped up in a deliberately exaggerated coming-of-age road trip vibe. It picked up a decent amount of praise for its human presentation when it first released, even if the actual gameplay systems were a bit thin. Thankfully, it seems that the writing carries most of the weight here, and my executive producer Mr. Lee from Eastern NC on eBay, they've chosen this as their pick of the week. Alright, the imports Play Asia territory. If you want to import any of these games, you can do so via Play Asia, and if you click my link, you can get 5% off anything from their website with my code Jordan2026. I'm one of the very few people with a discount code for Play Asia, so click my link and use it. Make the most of it. River City Saga Journey to the West is releasing on the 4th of June for PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch in Asia. There is a Japanese release, but it is not coming this month. This is not a remake of an old game, but a brand new River City Saga spin-off following the Three Kingdoms one from a couple of years back. Once again, Kunio and friends are dropped into another classic Chinese tale. This one reworks Journey to the West into a chaotic side-scrolling action roguelite with playable versions of Sun Wukong, Zhu Bajie, and Sha Wujing, all rendered in the series' trademark delinquent style. It looks knowingly ridiculous, which honestly is exactly what this series should be. And my executive producers, Vei, Firm Returns, and John Jamin, they've chosen this as their pick of the month. inKONBINI One Store, Many Stories is releasing on the 18th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in Japan. A narrative adventure set inside a small town, Japanese convenience store in the early 90s, following a university student covering shifts while slowly piecing together the lives of regular customers. Conversations, small choices, and day-to-day routines drive the experience here, very much built around atmosphere and nostalgia, right down to the fluorescent lighting and awkward late-night conversations. Looks interesting, and my executive producer Jimmy A. Guerrero, he's chosen this as his pick of the month. R-Type Dimensions 3 is releasing on the 18th of June for PlayStation 5, Switch, and Switch 2 in Japan, with North America and Europe following a bit later on. A full modern rebuild of R-Type 3, The Third Lightning, the 1993 Super Nintendo entry that pushed Mode 7 effects and memorization-heavy design to mildly abusive levels. Players can switch between updated 3D visuals and the original pixel presentation on the fly, alongside new quality-of-life features and co-op support. Sadly, it's been absolutely destroyed in its PC reviews as a poor remake and many bugs and stuff. Personally, having played it on both Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2, any major issues flew me by. It's just a brutally hard game that's made even more brutal. My Little Puppy is releasing on the 25th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in Japan and Asia, a gentle narrative adventure about guiding a lost puppy through a stylized afterlife while searching for its owner. Exploration and simple interactions form most of the experience, with the emotional angle very much front and center from the start. This absolutely feels engineered to make at least one person cry by the end, probably several actually, judging by Steam reviews, but it's supposed to be very good, and my executive producers Azrath and Dave Hallworth, they've chosen this as their pick of the month. Promise Mascot Agency is releasing on the 25th of June for PlayStation 5 and Switch in Japan, already available in Asia and coming soon to North America. This is a deeply strange open-world management adventure about running a mascot agency in a cursed Japanese town, balancing client work, local politics, and giant costume characters that all seem like mildly unsettling. Driving around recruiting mascots and resolving community problems forms most of the loop, which somehow only becomes harder to explain the longer you get into it. Kemco RPG Selection Volume 7 is releasing on the 25th of June for PlayStation 5 in Japan and Asia. Yes, somehow they're still releasing these on PlayStation 5 as well, despite already being on the PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch, way ahead of the PlayStation 5. This one bundles together As Divine Cross, Alphadia Genesis 2, Ruinverse, and Chroma Quaternion, continuing the company's heroic mission to ensure the world never runs dry of small-budgeted fantasy RPGs. At this point, the consistency itself is almost impressive, and my executive producer Robotech has chosen this as his pick of the month. Japan is also getting these games, which we already have in the West, and they are also getting these games which do not have English. Alright, the community spotlight for my executive producers over on Patreon. Madhawk110 sent in this photo picking up 2 very recent games, both reviewed very well, and I played a couple of hours of 007 and I'm really enjoying it. A nice bit of spy work has often been lacking in the video game adaptations, and it's nice to be able to do some quite meaty ones as well. Miami Sunrise sent in this photo picking up the PlayStation 4 physical of Witch on the Holy Night. When I saw this photo, I immediately thought, wow, that's going to be pricey. And yeah, I checked on eBay and boy, it's not cheap. Really, they underprinted this one. Instacritic picked up this wealth of games, including Popcorn Rocket, which I did a feature of in a video. Some guy made a game and decided to publish it physically all by himself, that was a really nice story, very heartwarming, and although the print was super low, it sold rather well for him. He's made his money back at least so far, and I think VGP still have some copies of it available. Jennifer M sent in this photo with some nice Dragon Quest games, which, if there's anything to go by with how Square are treating the Switch 2, it looks like it will be PS5 for the future physicals of this franchise. Adamantium sent in this photo picking up Atomfall, which grabbed me when I found out about it because the setting is a fictionalized version of Northern England, basically where I grew up, so I was interested in seeing how close it could be. Mr. Awesome sent in this photo with Alone in the Dark. I think THQ are the masters of taking legendary franchises, making a new game in them, and then letting them have zero impact on public consciousness for like whatsoever. Like, how do they do that? Firm Returns picked up a bunch of fighting games on the cheap. I'm not a huge fighting game fan, but the ones I do like tend to have, interesting characters, their backgrounds and stories and lore. So I do like Mortal Kombat and Tekken. Street Fighter less so. I was never grabbed by the character backstories there. Mr. Lee from Eastern NC on eBay sent in these games picking up Signy, maybe from Video Games Plus. This was almost going for $200 at one point on eBay. VGP have it brand new for $50. They, my man in Japan, picked up these games, picking up the import exclusive of Majogami. This one supposedly contains the extra content like more trials or something like that, which would make it a better build than the Switch and Switch 2 physical release. And there we have this month's video. Special thanks to my executive producers on Patreon for supporting me, plus you watching right now. If you watched all the way through, you are a legend too. I want to know who you are, so leave me, what have we got this month? Leave me alien emoji in honor of Alien Rogue Incursion. Why? I don't know, it's just the one that I'm looking at right now. If you want to purchase any of the games, please do so via the links below. That helps support this channel in the best way possible, especially this series. It's a lot of work for Tim. They don't make that much money in terms of ads, so if you can support me to support him, that would be great. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. Take care.